I think governance is a really broad topic. It covers capital, reputation, nepotism, fortune, birthright, violence. And at the same time, there's something very innate about it. Think about children on a schoolyard. You know, there's this authority maybe on the other end of the playground, but amongst themselves, they're able to come to a consensus. They're able to decide what to do.
I suppose it's this notion of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Forming a coherent group allows you to do things that you just can't do as a single individual. And oftentimes, you know, maybe there's an eventual limit, but usually the bigger the group, at least in the early stages, the more the greater this potentiality, the greater this improvement in what you can do. And I think this is probably, you know, clear even on the playground as an 8-year-old. Like the games that you can play if you all agree to play by the rules. And the games can be more interesting. It's like even today I play cards, 2-player games of cards, not so much fun compared to 3-player, 4-player, 5-player games of cards, right? Eventually you hit a limit and, you know, maybe there's too many people in the game when you get to like 9 players or something. But and it's certainly true in these early stages, like one-player game of cards, solitaire, that's really not so much fun compared to like, you know, bridge or something, 4-player game, right? Governance is really just this, you know, taken at its broadest sense, it's really just forming a collective that abides by some rules. Now, of course, there's questions about determining what rules they abide by, enforcing the rules and so forth, but in principle, it's not so very much different from a game of cards.
Where do you think your interest in governance sprang from? Very
difficult to say. I barely even remember these days, you know, what I was thinking of when I was a teenager, but I certainly liked, you know, from a very early age, I think I was like 8 or 9 when I started coding. I was quite interested in like systematics and working out rule systems. I made games as a teenager, like, you know, just crappy, but, you know, multiplayer games, paper, colored pens, sort of thing, cards. Eventually I got to the point where I could, with a friend, sort of self-publish like a strategy board game where, you know, the rules were designed. And I think a lot of it, I wouldn't like to say where in particular, you know, I became interested. I think I was always interested to some degree, just because I'm interested in, you know, the world. A big part of the world is people. It's like how people interact, systems by which people interact, how you can design them, how computers could intermediate human interaction, how they could be used for more than merely a tool to subjugate the world, but also could become a way of allowing people to interact in a new and more mutually beneficial ways between themselves.
Right.
I can certainly point to, I think, a few books. History of Western Philosophy was a nice one by Bertrand Russell, and it sort of opened my eyes to a lot of the philosophical currents of human interaction over the ages. I remember when I was, I guess I must have been late 20s, around the same time I was making this board game. I was thinking quite deeply about governance through the internet, computers, what we would now call, I guess, DAO stuff, but DAO at the level of a nation. I think I wrote up some of this stuff. I probably have it like in a file somewhere from, like, you know, 2008, something like this. But it was quite an interesting thought experiment. And I guess in part it's also the people that I've typically hung around, like some of my old school friends, not least Aaron, who is Foundation Council President, and Al, who is the head of Web3 research. People I went to school with, they're people that I've talked about all this stuff endlessly with, and I think they're both people interested in similar things, you know, systematics, rule sets, game theory, and so forth.